What's up, everyone? Welcome to your weekly tech update, the show that explores the newest, coolest, and yes, just sometimes crazy side of the interwebs. I'm your host, Ray McNeil. Coming up on the program today, SpaceX's Starship survives its return to Earth and aces the landing test. So we're going to take a look back at how far SpaceX and their Starship have come, including the wins and a few of the losses as well. Then I'm going to show you the coolest video yet from SpaceX, showing the Starship and the booster acing their landing tests, and a fiery re-entry worthy of a blockbuster movie. Happening in this week's What The, two short videos showing what happens when you try to fish with a drone and move a washing machine in Amsterdam. And of course, we'll wrap up the program with this week's Moment of Joy. All that and a whole lot more coming up on today's edition of your weekly tech update. Next. Which brings us to present day, and one of the most fascinating things I have ever seen in space flight. Musk launching the largest rocket ever and ejecting his cherry red Tesla Roadster into the great beyond. On launch day, you were able to watch a live stream of the launch and subsequent action in the car and of the two boosters that managed to land upright in tandem. Apparently, the center stage ran out of fuel on its way down to a barge and crashed into the water, but still, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. The Roadster was packed away in the nose of the rocket and seemed to handle spaceflight very, very well. After the launch, we were treated to a live stream of what Musk is calling Starman orbiting Earth in his personal Tesla Roadster. Starman is a mannequin decked out in the new SpaceX spacesuit. Eventually, we get a different angle and can see the words "Don't Panic" on the display in the dash. Of course, a nod to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then another Easter egg, a tiny little Tesla Roadster on the dash of the car with an even tinier Starman in the driver's seat. After taking several orbits around the Earth, the craft escaped orbit and started making its long trek to a Mars orbit. Except the aim wasn't quite on, and it seems the Roadster is now going to head past Mars and to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. If I were Musk, I would just have to consider this a new challenge. He should now make it his mission to build the technology to be able to retrieve the Roadster before it collides with an asteroid, bring it back down here to Earth, and then see if he could drive it again. How cool would it be to drive a car that traveled beyond Mars and back? SpaceX has finally performed a high-altitude test flight for a prototype of its Starship vehicle. After a successful launch, the Starship rose and successfully maneuvered its way to the landing area. However, it appeared that the spacecraft didn't slow down enough for a proper landing. What happened was it went straight up like it was supposed to. It performed an amazing maneuver where it went belly first, fell for quite a ways, and then its jet engine kicked in, flipped it straight up once again as it landed straight up and down, just how it took off. But it looked to, be going a bit too fast and ended up exploding in a thrilling fashion. The moment recalls the many attempts that we saw of the Falcon 9 landings that didn't quite work out in the early to mid-2000s until, of course, they did. On the live feed, SpaceX said that the test was successful and noted it would be moving on to testing the SN9 prototype next. Elon Musk tweeted, quote, "Successful ascent, switch over to header tanks, and precise flap control to landing point." In a follow-up, he explained the landing, saying that the low fuel header tank pressure during the landing burn contributed to the high touchdown velocity and the massive explosion. The good news is that the team got all the data they needed, and it appears everything is in order for future tests. The second flight of a prototype of Elon Musk's next-generation Starship rocket meant for eventual trips to Mars was picture perfect right up until the landing, which, like the test of an earlier prototype, ended up in a fiery explosion. After several delays and a dust-up with the Federal Aviation Administration over its launch license, SpaceX launched the vehicle dubbed SN9. The three-engine rocket flew to an altitude of 6.2 miles or 10 kilometers, shutting off its three engines in sequence as it climbed higher. It then began a long fall back to Earth, as its predecessor SN8 did during a test flight back in December. As it came in for a landing, SN9 executed a landing burn to orient itself vertically for touchdown, then appeared to land hard and not quite vertical, exploding on impact just as the SN8 did. The FAA announced after the flight that the agency will open and oversee an investigation into SN9's landing mishap. Although this was an uncrewed test flight, the investigation will identify the root cause of today's mishap and possible opportunities to further enhance safety as the program develops. This comes from an FAA spokesperson in a statement. SpaceX still considers the test a success, however, and will continue to gather data for future test flights that will eventually take the prototypes to orbit. We've just got to work on that landing, SpaceX's John Insprucker said during the live stream of the flight. The wait for the next test flight might not be a long one, as the next prototype, SN10, is already standing on the launch pad not far from where the SN9 took off.